I think it's the greatest time to be a crime reporter. So much information is available that wasn't previously available for many years. And we are moving into an era where you have court documents and affidavits and things that we can access now that we couldn't access before quickly. Body camera footage, cell phone video from people on the street, surveillance video that is available to us to challenge the authorities, to challenge the police in what they tell us. And really, there's never been a more important time than now, because there's all these cracks in our society, and there's this mistrust, and there's this suspicion everywhere. And what we do is so important in trying to we try as hard as we can to bring fair information. One of the most difficult things that I have always found is when covering crime or covering these stories is holding the police accountable. It's a difficult thing to do. It's hard to scrutinize them. They clearly don't like it. They make it difficult to do. And it certainly makes our jobs tough to do it. And certainly from my experience in Uvalde, it makes what we do so much more important. In many cases, we rush to air with it. And we don't give ourselves an opportunity to try to make sure that what we're saying is right. And we'll say, well, we'll say, police tell us, police say. And then later, we learn that the information could be different from what we were initially told and from what actually happened. And I think the best example of that, Uvalde is one thing, but certainly George Floyd. And you'll all recall that in the immediate aftermath in George Floyd, where the police initially told everyone in their statement that Floyd had physically resisted officers and appeared to be suffering from medical distress after being handcuffed. And of course, we know that wasn't the case. But many of the local stations ran with that. And that's understandable. But I think since George Floyd, we have all been trained in some ways to think differently about what the police tell us initially. And I think that, again, was very evident in Uvalde. Not only in Uvalde, but in other situations where I am having to confront people, the very same people in my life who have been sources to me throughout my career, having to confront them over information that they're giving me, which may not be accurate or which may be some kind of a spin, is certainly very difficult, because I don't want, honestly, for me, it's something where I do not want to be in a position where they're angry at me over this. And so there's a way to deal with it, is you just bring in other reporters, or you bring in other people to help you to try and navigate that difficulty. But the hardest thing, I think, for reporters, especially young reporters, is when you think you have a source in some agency, and I certainly found this in Texas, and I find this in other places, and it's hard to hold people accountable who are providing you this information and who you are relying. They work for these agencies, they work for law enforcement, and they are the people that are providing you information. And then you have to challenge them, and it becomes very difficult. I will never have moments like this again. I will never have opportunities like this again. And I think in many ways, how that came about was because of my curiosity and because of the support that I had from my bosses at CNN and putting together an important team. They gave me an incredible producer, an incredible writer and editor, and putting all of those things together have certainly made a difference and allowed me to be who I am as I searched for answers and searched for what really happened. My questioning of the police in Uvalde began almost immediately. I remember getting on a plane. I just gotten back from Buffalo. It was a couple of days after the Buffalo shooting. And Uvalde happens, and CNN calls me and says, okay, we need you to go. At that point, we learned 17 kids were dead. And I started calling sources, and I said, what's going on? And really, no one knew what was going on. and consistently just given this bad information. And when you would ask him to make sense of it, he would just give you the same thing. Well, we were still looking at it, we're still investigating. But as a police officer, you should know what you're saying didn't make any sense. And he wouldn't respond. So then finally, after a couple of days of this, of him talking and talking and talking, they decide that they're going to have a press conference. And at that point, we're about two to 3 days into this, and we learned from the family members that they were outside of the school, and they were trying to get inside to rescue their kids, and the police officers weren't going in, and there was this perception that all these police officers were standing outside, and there was this emotion that really took over. And it was a really tough time for me, because you really got to see the families, and you really got to see the pain that they were going through. Being sympathetic to those family members, having compassion, and being considerate of their needs, to me has always been important. And we are a place for them to share what it is they're experiencing. We are a vehicle for them to get answers and to hold those in power accountable. And I think it's such an important thing that we should not forget. And we must always, and one thing that Uvalde taught me is that we must always consider how and what we say affects them. And is certain information necessary? Do we need to hear the gunshots of their kids being slaughtered in the classrooms? Do we need to show the gunman or report his name? These are serious considerations that I think news leaders need to make. And really, for crime reporters, one of the best things that they can do is try to build relationships with sources. It's a key part of reporting. You guys want scoops from your reporters, right? You want to break news, you want to come up with an exclusive. But you have to give your reporters time to do that. We need time to build sources. We need to make an effort to build these relationships. The thing I